Welcome back to Family Gamer TV. Now, as you can see, our toy shelf is getting a little bit packed as we approach the game release season. But today I wanted to look at two franchises in particular, Disney Infinity, we've got some characters at the front here, and Skylanders, obviously the more long-standing title we know more about. But I wanted to look at a couple of figures. So if we just pick out two, I want to see how these compare. So I'll start off by looking at a figure here from Pirates of the Caribbean, Disney Infinity, with Skylanders Giants. Now you see immediately that these Disney Infinity figures are actually quite big and sort of vary more in size. So here, Bouncer is considered quite a big Skylander, but pretty much the same size as this Disney Infinity character here. Other similarities you'll notice are that the base, again, signifies what grouping they are. So whereas in Disney Infinity you have a grouping based on the franchise, so here it's Pirates of the Caribbean. In Skylanders, obviously, they don't have a franchise that exists to go on, but they've invented their own groupings, which are around these elemental zones. And here Bouncer, of course, is a tech Skylander. In terms of the sort of the paint finish and sort of number of materials, I think Skylanders probably has the edge in terms of there's more translucent elements, and it seems like there's a greater variety of materials. But I think Disney Infinity characters here, you see the airbrushing work, maybe it has a few more paint passes. There's obviously been a similar sort of attention to detail in terms of the eyes and just the overall design. Now, there's more of a tension here, I think, for Disney Infinity because they have to work across existing franchises, pull in those characters, but at the same time make them feel like they're part of a collectible set of toys. So let's put these down, and maybe do another comparison. So I'll pick Mrs. Incredible, and how about Chill? So again, you've got two similar characters. So the smaller standard Skylanders, I think, are generally smaller than the Disney Infinity characters. And Chill there is much more cartoony, stood on her sort of water base. And Mrs. Incredible in a similar sort of action pose. And I think that's something that you see in these sorts of toys, is that the creators, the designers of the toys, like to get them in a position like they're actually moving and forming action, and that's really important because these toys aren't posable. They need to feel in the hand like they're exciting, and particularly for a child, they need to pick them up and want to actually run around with them, do things with them, if they're going to work as a toy, as well as just something that you put on the portal or in the Infinity base and gain access to things in the game. Mrs. Incredible here, again, her limbs are quite small, and we've had some problems with our Hex Skylander where the limbs came off. And Chill, you have this similar sort of flex. So I think the movement here on these figures is similar, but both of them feel like they're sort of more solid. I think maybe the Incredibles Disney Infinity character feels like you're less likely to sort of snap the arms off if you're really to put her through the ringer, as my kids often do with these toys. So let's just get out one final comparison. Who should we pick? So let's go for the Lone Ranger and my favourite, Series 1, Stealth Elf. So here you can see the greater variety in the Disney Infinity characters. The Lone Ranger figure is a standard toy figure, but is much taller. And if you saw our videos of the Cars figures, they're much squatter, obviously, because they're closer to the ground, but much more bulky. So, but these two, again, you can see that the pose on Stealth Elf is a real sort of super action one, whereas the Lone Ranger perhaps reflects his more sort of mature franchise that he comes from, and there is action there. He's reaching for his gun, but it's a little bit more subtle, and sort of the imaginative play that would come out of using using the Lone Ranger figure, I think, would be different to the sort of play of Skylanders. And my kids, when they first picked up the Disney Infinity characters, they were sort of throwing them around, fighting with them, hitting them against each other. But after a while, they started making up slightly more detailed stories, and I think that comes from some of the poses they've been put in. It's much more. There's a story going on in the way that the Lone Ranger has been posed. He's reaching for his gun. You look in his eyes and you think he's obviously seen someone he needs to sort of take down. And so there is, I think, more of a sort of a movie feel to him. Whereas Stealth Elf, who's a great little character, with her sort of ninja bones out, her blue ponytail flying, is much more about the instant moment and the action. And I think that is quite typical of the way the two games sort of differentiate themselves. So whereas Skylanders is a real action, sort of slightly retro console romp where you're sort of fighting and you're platforming your way around, Disney Infinity has that, but perhaps doesn't execute that quite so well, but has more variety, and so I think it will engage a slightly older audience. And the things you do in Disney Infinity are more considered and more varied as the figures are more varied. So there you go. That's our comparison of Disney Infinity figures and Skylanders figures. Not long now till they hit the store, so it's going to be really interesting to see how they compare. Obviously, both companies are itching to sort of get their toys in the hands of their audience, and we're really keen to see how they do as well. That's all we've got time for this week on Family Gamer TV, but we'll be back with more soon.